It's 9:05 Eastern Standard Time, New South Wales, Australia. Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, found this story. Pregnant Jehovah's Witness teen may be forced to get blood transfusion. Now, this is breaking news in Australia. Jehovah's Witness girl may be forced to receive a blood transfusion against her will this weekend when she gives birth in Melbourne. Mercy Hospital Victoria has granted Supreme Court authority on Friday to give the girl blood as a last resort if she suffers a postpartum hemorrhage when induced into labour on Sunday afternoon. The 17-year-old first-time mother is considered to be at increased risk of hemorrhaging because she is of small stature and the baby is large, meaning she may have a long labour, an assisted birth, or an emergency cesarean. Jehovah's Witnesses forbid followers from receiving blood transfusions or blood products. Now, that's not biblical, but that's what they do. The risk of the baby from the mother refusing blood is considered low. The Human Tissue Act has a provision that minors may be given blood transfusions without parental consent. However, it was edited in 1994 when the concept of a mature minor who could make up their own mind, the court was told on Friday. However, child psychiatrist Campbell Paul told the hearing he did not believe the girl had the decision-making capacity to be considered as having Gillick competence, a term used to describe whether a child can consent to their own medical treatment. Professor Paul said the girl had been through considerable disruption and trauma through her life and had transgressed a major value of her family and her community by having premarital sex. Oh my gosh. Now we're unraveling some truths here. He said, therefore, you could imagine that she feels very frightened and worried about further punishment from the cult. Obstetrician and gynecologist Jacqueline Van Dam told the court she was concerned about the girl's naivety, that if anything happened, she would be protected by her faith. She said a number of strategies could be undertaken, first in the case of hemorrhage, such as injecting a drug to limit bleeding or stitching the uterus. Oh, gosh. Come on. The girl's mother, who said she would not consent to the hospital administering blood to her daughter, told the court receiving a transfusion would have a significant impact on the girl's well-being. Oh, for goodness sake! Being forced to have that done against her will would be something like having violence done to her or being raped. Oh, gosh! She said in a statement read to the court, she wants to do the right thing by Jehovah doesn't care! This is a man-made cult, devilish, murderous doctrine, policy. Justice Cameron McCauley granted Mercy Hospital the authority to give the girl a transfusion if necessary as a last resort, but only if they first used all other strategies to stop the bleeding and obtained authority from 2 doctors. I'm not satisfied that the girl has the maturity to understand the consequences of her choice, he said. I do not consider that allowing her, in effect, to choose to die is in the best of her interests. These Jehovah Witnesses, they're relentless. They're absolutely relentless. I wish that the Jehovah Witnesses would take their devilish, murderous policies and doctrines back to America where they belong. Making people think that you can't have a blood transfusion. It's not there. It's not in the scriptures. There were no blood transfusions in Bible times, you fools. And you're not under the law. For goodness sake. When James sent that letter out in Acts chapter 15 and then another chapter, it had nothing to do with salvation, you fools. Nothing to do with it. This is Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, New South Wales, Australia, disgusted again with the Jehovah Witness policies and doctrines. Bye for now. Hi everybody, Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, New South Wales, Australia. Religion can deceive, can't it? Watch this story and see how easy it can happen. Here we go.
First, the 7-year-old boy facing death because his parents' religious beliefs prohibit blood transfusions. The couple, devout Jehovah's Witnesses, acknowledge their son needs a liver transplant, but refuse to consent to him receiving blood. As Jenna Hudson reports, they're headed to the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court. Good Goodness
We understand
gracious.
this is very stressing for you, but how can you deny your son the treatment he needs to survive?
We are talking about the difference between potentially a child dying or surviving.
You could give him the consent to have this blood transfusion. Why won't you? Why can't you?
Parents around the country are right now shocked and angry at the heartbreaking determination of this mum and dad. Their 7-year-old son has a genetic disease that's shutting down his liver, and he will die unless he has a liver transplant. Problem is, mum and dad are devout Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're refusing to give consent to one vital part of the surgery their son so desperately needs.
Is that the risk that you're willing to take?
The blood transfusion their little boy will most certainly need during the operation is completely against their religious beliefs.
For Jehovah's Witnesses, there are essentially no exceptions for the acceptance of blood transfusions.
How can you deny your son, though, of a blood transfusion he so desperately needs?
Please leave me alone.
The Children's Health Queensland Hospital is taking the parents to the Supreme Court in a fight for the little boy's life. In these documents, it states the parents are aware their child will die within 2 years without this treatment. But on the consent form, the father has crossed out the words blood transfusion.
I don't believe that the argument that you can have a transplant without a transfusion is logical, because you still have some residual blood from the donor in the transplanted organ.
Dr. Ross Walker is one of the only Australian medical practitioners who is willing to talk on camera about this sensitive topic.
When we're talking about the life of a child, I think people's own religious beliefs have to stand aside.
This is the little boy's paediatric gastroenterologist. In court documents, she shares her deepest concerns.
Death is an inevitable consequence of liver failure unless a liver transplant is performed. In a small patient, even a relatively small amount of blood can be significant.
All doctors involved in this controversial and delicate case cannot be interviewed because this medical tug of war is still before the Supreme Court.
You can't have the transplant without the transfusion in the vast majority of cases.
A doctor in the court affidavit also states if the boy has the liver transplant with the blood transfusion soon, he has a 90% chance of surviving for another 5 years and a 72% chance of living for more than 25 years. Doctors also say the sicker the little boy gets, the harder it is to carry out the liver transplant at all.
These are very intricate operations, and there's quite a deal of blood loss that goes with the operation.
Jehovah's Witnesses believe the Bible commands they must not ingest blood. They say blood represents life and only God is the giver of life. We're told what these parents are fearing is that their child will be polluted, both spiritually and morally.
Really not accepting blood transfusions, perhaps even in a situation where it might be a case of life and death, is essentially considered a small price to pay for eternal life.
University of Queensland Dr. Tom Eckner is a lecturer in history of religious thought.
So these decisions about whether a child will live and die, perhaps regarding accepting a blood transfusion or not accepting, must be viewed in terms of what God would want for that child.
In the eyes of a Jehovah's Witness, how would they view this case?
I think that Jehovah's Witnesses would see this as the government impinging upon very central and foundational beliefs that they have, that they've based their lives upon.
Look, we just wanted to find out, how is your son feeling today?
The boy's parents aren't willing to defend their decision, which could ultimately kill their son.
He could die without a blood transfusion. Is that the risk that you're willing to take?
It's my opinion that religion should have no role in the operating theatre. We're talking about life and death situations as opposed to someone's personal philosophy, especially when you're inflicting that personal philosophy on your child.
Are you willing to sacrifice his life for your religion? Is that what it is?
I said leave me alone.
There are many controversial cases relating to Jehovah's Witness children and blood transfusions. In Sydney this year, a pregnant Jehovah's Witness and her baby tragically died after the woman refused a blood transfusion. Also in New South Wales in 2013, the Supreme Court overruled the wishes of a 17-year-old Jehovah's Witness suffering from a lethal form of blood cancer. In London last year, a High Court judge ruled that the son of 2 devout Jehovah's Witnesses can be given blood. And in Dublin in 2008, a High Court judge said a 4-year-old girl could undergo a life-saving blood transfusion, despite her parents' objections.
I don't believe that Jehovah's Witnesses are irrational people. I don't believe that we can just simply label them as good or bad. It's not that black and white.
And I think in that situation, we've got to do what's best for the child.
Is your religion more important to you than your son's life?
And a directions hearing on that case is expected to take place later this month. We will let you know the outcome.
Let's continue on. This is from jwtruth.org.
Do you believe that the Bible prohibits blood transfusion? Well, the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the Bible does prohibit blood transfusions. And if this interpretation is right, then the Jehovah's Witnesses are following God's word. God bless them. But if their interpretation is wrong, then the Watchtower may be blood guilty, blood responsible for the deaths of many of their followers. God have mercy on them. The Jehovah's Witnesses are permitted most forms of medical treatment, but under no circumstances must they ever have a blood transfusion. You see, abstaining from blood is considered to be an area that identifies them as the only true religion. In my previously recorded video called Cold-Blooded, I shared evidence with you that the Watchtower's policy on blood has changed over the years. Now, I'd like to share with you how this policy is lived out by its members and reinforced by its leaders. This footage is of a family whose child needed a blood transfusion. This footage is an excerpt from the DVD called Witnesses of Jehovah. I want you to take a look at it.
The control tentacles of the governing body extend even into the life and death world of medical treatment.
In the 17th chapter of Leviticus, in the 10th verse, it states that one should not eat blood of any sort. This means that God does not want us to sustain our life off of the life of some other creature. And that for that reason, because God has forbidden it, we abstain from taking blood.
The blood issue in the back of our minds was bothering us because as Jehovah's Witnesses, if we freely gave a blood transfusion to our daughter, we'd be excommunicated, we'd be disfellowshipped. Well, the doctors finally came to our room and it was just like an ultimatum. They said, listen, we know from our records that you're a Jehovah's Witness. We know that you don't take blood transfusions. And the doctor looked me straight in the eye and said, Mr. and Mrs. Blizzard, you have to make a decision, yes or no, whether your child lives or dies. I remember going over to the bed and she had these cords and wires keeping her alive, life support systems, and holding this limp child that was our only daughter, and just going over to the window and looking out and watching the clouds and the sky and just started to weep. And I said, oh God, Jehovah, and I prayed to Jehovah.
We just had a real distinct impression that we were supposed to obey God's law and go by what we had always been taught, and that we were to let our daughter die. And so we just called the doctors back in and told them that we had just had to let her die, that we had to obey God's law.
About a half an hour later, a sheriff deputy came to our room and gave my wife and I both citations, and they told us that a court order has already been issued, your daughter is going to get the blood, and they also warned the staff of the hospital not to allow us to take Jenny out of the hospital.
And we were charged with child neglect and abuse.
The witnesses, there was
Rightfully
multitudes
so.
of them that came up to the room, just swarmed the room, tried to giving us Watchtower articles about artificial blood, and you just can't let your child take that blood, and just putting this heavy guilt trip on us. The elders were relieved to find out that there was still time to get Jenny out of the hospital, and they would come up to me and say, hey, I've got a plan. We can get her, we can hire a helicopter, we can sneak her out of this hospital, just unhook the tubes, and we're gone. And I said, wait a minute. You can't do that. It's against the law. I'll be charged with murder. They said, that's a chance you're going to have to take. And
see how fanatical the Jehovah's Witness Watchtower Society is? I don't think the public really realizes how dangerous the Jehovah Witness cult is. Listen to these poor people.
I just told them, look, I just can't let my child die in that way. And the elders were just so upset. They left in a huff. They were mad. And one of the elders said on the way out, he looked me in the eye and said, you know what? I hope your daughter gets hepatitis from that blood.
What a horrible thing. That's the mentality of this cult. That's the vicious mentality of this Jehovah Witness cult. Horrible, wicked cult.
And that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I was just broken here. My own people, God's organization, turning against me, cursing me, because I just wanted to see my child live. And so they left. And we were all alone. Even my own parents didn't come see us.
I think many times Jehovah's Witnesses have really never thought the blood thing through.
No.
It's either right or it's wrong. If it's wrong, the Watchtower Society is guilty of causing the deaths of thousands of people. That's right.
Now, I can stand here and tell you right now, this minute, not that anybody's going to listen to me, that it's wrong. The ingestion of blood is what the Bible was talking about, not the infusion of blood to save life. It's the eating of the blood, not the taking of the blood to save life. Oh, gosh. Don't worry, the Watchtower's guilty of this.
Wrong. It's evil.
You see, thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses over the years have refused blood transfusions, believing that they were following God's word and the Watchtower. If accurate, then they were obedient. But if inaccurate, then they and the Watchtower may be blood guilty for the death of thousands of people. So which is it? Blood obedient or blood guilty? You decide. I hope this video has been helpful to you and to yours. It's a life-saving video. Share it with a friend. God bless you. I'm Daniel.
They're a good channel, that. I'll just put it back up. It's jwtruth.org. jwtruth.org. I just want to say to you, like, if you take smoking for instance. They say you can't smoke. Okay, you can't smoke, but can you eat tobacco? I don't think they'd care if you ate tobacco, right? That's ingesting it. But they don't like you smoking it. You can eat it, but you can't smoke it. In the case of the blood, this whole blood issue, the Bible's specifically sharing about the fact that it didn't want anyone to eat blood. Eat it. It didn't mean transfuse it to save life. Now, there was no such thing as blood transfusions in Bible times. What on earth, I think it was in the 1940s that the Jehovah Witnesses come up with this idea. Over 50,000 people have died. I just hope some way somebody gets into Parliament in Australia and goes, they're wrong, and we're going to get them, we're going to get them, we're going to take them to court, and we're going to claim the deaths of these innocent people and find this organisation, this wicked cult organisation that's been run out of Russia for the deaths of thousands and thousands of innocent people. You know, they talk about things that you can't do and you can do, and yet a lot of them drink behind closed doors. And they've got all other sins going on. Yet they'll stand there and watch someone die. That's about as demonized and demonic as you can get. It's the opposite of Christ. Christ wouldn't let somebody lay there and die. This is Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, New South Wales, Australia. Bye for now. Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.